the other life you could already be living. What if you woke up one day and realized the life you're living isn't the only one? Not in a metaphorical sense. Literally, imagine that somewhere, just a breath away from here, another version of you is already living the life you've only dared to imagine. Thriving, fulfilled, free. And what if the only thing keeping you from stepping into that life was your belief that you can't? This story isn't about fantasy. It's not a science lecture either. It's about a quiet revolution that begins in the most unexpected place, within yourself. Meet Noah. At 38, he was a man many would envy. Good job, stable income, decent apartment, friends who showed up to birthday dinners. From the outside, things looked fine. But that was the problem. Everything felt just fine. Not extraordinary, not alive. Just a loop of quiet, slow repetition. Wake up, scroll, work, numb out, repeat. There was one night, a cold Thursday in late November, when Noah couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about something odd he'd seen earlier that day. He was walking past a bookstore and caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the glass. Only it didn't feel like him. The posture was different, the eyes more awake. For a second, he felt like he'd seen another version of himself, one that hadn't made the same compromises. That night, something cracked. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't quit his job or run off to Bali, but he sat on the edge of his bed and whispered something out loud. There has to be more than this. Not in despair, but in curiosity. And in that moment, it was as if something listened. The next day, Noah stumbled across an online article about something called quantum reality shifting, a theory that there are infinite versions of our lives unfolding in parallel, and that under certain conditions, our consciousness can align with another version of reality. It sounded absurd, but also strangely familiar. The idea was simple and terrifying. You are not just one person living one life. You are one expression of a much larger self, constantly choosing which path to walk, even if most of those choices feel unconscious. And if that's true, you could, theoretically, step into another version of yourself, one that already exists. Noah started reading, watching, listening, at first just out of curiosity, but then something deeper began to stir. He remembered moments from childhood, dreams he'd let go of, feelings he used to have when he looked at the stars. There was something underneath the numbness he'd wrapped around himself, something alive. The first time he tried to shift, he didn't feel much. He sat on the floor, breathed slowly, and imagined a life he truly wanted. Not a fantasy mansion or private jet, just waking up feeling proud of who he was. A career that lit him up, a partner who saw him, a sense of purpose. He kept doing it. Every day, 10 minutes, then 20. He didn't try to force anything. Just feel, just imagine. And slowly, subtly, the world around him began to change. Not in huge leaps, but in whispers. He noticed new thoughts, new ideas. He started saying no to things that didn't resonate, saying yes to things that once felt out of reach. He signed up for a workshop. He reached out to someone he'd admired for years. He began writing again, something he hadn't done since college. And then something strange happened. One morning, Noah woke up and felt off, not in a bad way, in a different way. His apartment looked the same, but it felt different, lighter. He walked to the mirror and paused. His face looked clearer, not younger, not changed, just more him. Something had shifted. In the months that followed, things accelerated. Opportunities opened. Connections formed. He met someone who felt like a missing piece. His creativity returned like a flood. But more importantly, he stopped waiting for permission, for validation, for life to begin. And here's the wild part. He didn't change anything in the traditional sense. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't move across the country. He just began tuning himself, aligning his inner frequency with the life he felt was already waiting. You see, quantum jumping isn't about magic. It's about resonance. Every version of you already exists in the quantum field. The bold you, the healed you, the you that never gave up. And through conscious intention, you can begin shifting your alignment. This isn't positive thinking, it's physics meeting awareness. When you change your perception, your beliefs, your emotional state, your identity, you begin to collapse one set of possibilities and expand another. That's the jump, but it only works if you believe you can. That's the hardest part. We're taught to trust what we can see, to stay within the boundaries of logic, but logic is built on yesterday's evidence, and your future doesn't live there. Noah learned that firsthand. The more he trusted the feeling, the more he acted like the version of himself he wanted to become, the more his outer world adjusted. Not instantly, but consistently. And there were setbacks, of course. Days when the old reality pulled hard, when doubts crept in, when he wondered if he was just pretending. But then he'd remember, pretending is how every transformation starts. You act as if, until the if becomes real. The most powerful shift came during a conversation with his younger brother. They hadn't spoken deeply in years, but that day his brother said, "You seem different, lighter, like you finally landed." And Noah realized he hadn't escaped his life. He hadn't manifested a perfect one. He had merged with a version of himself that already knew who he was. And from that place, everything else flowed. You might be wondering, how do I do this? You begin exactly where you are. You get quiet. You ask, what life am I ready to live? And you stop waiting for the world to prove it first. You feel it now. You imagine the details. You embody the energy. You begin to move, not toward it, but as it. And when you do, the quantum field, that sea of infinite possibilities, responds. Because it always does. You are not here to repeat. You are here to reveal, to unlock what's already within you, to jump. So, are you ready? If this story touched something deep in you, if it reminded you of a part you've forgotten, don't let it fade. Sit with it. Feel it. And if you're willing, share your story in the comments. We are all jumping. Together. Noah's story didn't end with that realization. In many ways, that's where it truly began. As he stepped more into the energy of his chosen life, he began noticing patterns, old thought loops that tried to drag him back. Beliefs like, "You're not ready," or "This is too good to be real." These weren't random. They were neural echoes, remnants of the version of him that had spent years settling, shrinking, surviving. At first, he tried to silence them, positive affirmations, motivational videos. But the more he resisted, the louder they became. Until one day he sat down and did something radical. He listened. He listened to every fear, every doubt, every voice that told him to play small. And instead of pushing them away, he said, "Thank you. Thank you for trying to protect me. Thank you for keeping me safe all these years. But I'm not that person anymore." And that changed everything. You see, shifting realities isn't just about leaping forward, it's also about letting go, shedding the layers of identity that were never truly you, the guilt, the hesitation, the borrowed definitions of success. It's an unlearning, and that's not easy. Noah started writing these conversations down, between his past and his future self. It became a practice, not therapy, not journaling, more like time travel. He would write as if his higher self was guiding him, reminding him who he really was beneath the noise. And through these dialogues, something beautiful unfolded. A kind of reunion, like reconnecting with a part of yourself that had been waiting patiently just outside the walls you built. The truth is, the quantum version of you, the one living your dream, isn't a stranger. It's not a fantasy. It's you without the filters, without the fear. So when people talk about shifting into new timelines, they're not escaping this world. They're returning to a more aligned one. And alignment isn't a vibe, it's a choice. Every thought, every action, every moment is a fork in the road. One path leads to the repetition of the old, the other to the unfolding of the new. And the difference is subtle. A breath, a word, a yes when fear wants a no. Noah began to live differently. Not because someone gave him permission, But because he stopped waiting for it, he walked slower, listened deeper, spoke more truthfully. He created space, space for synchronicity, for insight, for life to surprise him. One day, while sitting in a cafe, a stranger sat beside him. They started talking. She was an artist, bold, intuitive. They connected in a way that felt inevitable, not rushed, not forced, like their paths had touched in other timelines and were meeting again in this one. She later told him, "I don't know why, but when I saw you, I felt like you were vibrating differently, like you were already in the life you wanted." And that's when he realized reality doesn't shift around you. It shifts through you. You don't get your dream life. You become the person who already has it, and the dream life arrives as a reflection. This isn't about pretending. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to forget, who you are beneath the noise of not enoughness. That version of you has always existed. You just needed to match its frequency. Let's pause for a second. You might be asking, but how do I know I'm shifting? You'll feel it. You'll notice less resistance, more clarity. You'll find yourself choosing peace over control, expansion over fear. You'll start receiving the exact lessons, mentors, and moments that match your intention because you're finally in alignment with them. And sometimes, yes, the shift is uncomfortable. You'll lose people, lose habits, even parts of your identity. But what you gain is yourself. And from that place, everything changes. Noah kept jumping, not to escape his life, but to deepen it. He became more present, not less. He wasn't chasing new realities. He was inviting them through his presence. Each time he sat in meditation, he wasn't hoping something would appear. He was connecting with a truth that was already there, a version of himself already walking in purpose, already free. And it wasn't just mental. He felt it in his body, in his heart. That subtle shift in energy, that soft but steady pulse of knowing, I am living as the version of me I was born to become. This, he realized, was the secret. Quantum jumping isn't about escape. It's about embodiment. The more real it feels on the inside, the faster it materializes on the outside. Not because the universe is responding to your words, but because it's echoing your frequency. And your frequency? It's your dominant feeling, your deepest belief, your silent expectations. So Noah stopped hoping. He started assuming, not with arrogance, with trust. He walked into rooms expecting connection. He started projects expecting success. He made decisions expecting alignment. And sure enough, the world responded. Because the world doesn't give you what you want. It reflects who you are. So who are you, really? The person shaped by pain and past? Or the version you feel rising when you close your eyes and finally listen? The answer isn't in a book. It's not in a course. It's inside you. Always has been. And maybe, just maybe, you're already halfway there. There came a moment, a quiet morning after days of rain, when Noah sat by his window and watched light pour through the clouds. It wasn't just a beautiful moment. It was symbolic. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't waiting for something to change outside him. He was the change. And that's when he understood something he hadn't before. Quantum jumping wasn't about manifesting things. It wasn't about manipulating life to match your desires. It was about aligning your being so clearly with your higher truth that the world had no choice but to reorganize around it. It was about coherence. Mind, heart, body, all saying the same thing. I am ready. I am worthy. I am that version of me. Now. From that place, life flowed. Noah stopped chasing. He no longer asked, how will this happen? That wasn't his job anymore. His job was to stay aligned, to stay open, to walk like the man who already had what he once feared he'd never touch. He started making different choices, the kind you make when you trust that you're not alone in the process. When you trust that something greater, call it source, God, the field, is guiding you, not against your will, but in partnership with it. He began to surrender, not in defeat, but in devotion. Each morning, he would place his hand on his chest and ask one question: who am I becoming today? And the answer didn't always come in words. Sometimes it came in a feeling, a song, a message from someone unexpected, a gentle nudge from the universe saying, "This way." That's the thing about higher realities. They speak softly. They don't yell. They don't demand. But when you listen, they guide you with unmistakable clarity. One night Noah had a dream. In it, he stood at the edge of a vast ocean. Behind him was the life he had lived. Safe, predictable, linear. In front of him was something else. Infinite, unmapped, alive. He turned to leave, and then stopped. He looked over his shoulder, smiled at his old life, not in regret, but in gratitude. And then he stepped into the water. When he woke up, he wasn't afraid anymore. That day, he made a decision, not out of pressure, not out of desperation, but from a place of pure alignment. He quit his job. He didn't have a perfect plan, just a feeling, a frequency, and enough trust in his inner voice to let that be enough. Within weeks, he received an offer to collaborate on a creative project he'd always dreamed of, something he would have missed if he'd stayed on the old path. The opportunity wasn't random. It was a match, a mirror of the energy he was now living in. You see, the universe doesn't work by logic. It works by laws, energetic laws. And one of them is this: when your inner reality becomes stable, your outer reality becomes inevitable. It's not always immediate, but it is certain. Because when you shift who you are at the core, reality has to shift to meet you there. That's not theory. That's resonance. So if you've been trying to make things happen, trying to force, to push, to hustle your way into a new life, maybe that's the very thing slowing you down. Maybe what's needed isn't more effort, but more alignment. Start by asking, what would it feel like to already be there? What would I think? How would I move? Who would I forgive? What would I let go of? And most importantly, what would I no longer tolerate from myself? This is the part no one talks about. That quantum jumping isn't about visualizing a better life. It's about becoming the version of you who is finally willing to stop playing small. It's about shedding your identity like old skin, even when it hurts. Even when the old version of you screams for comfort, for certainty, for the familiar. Because transformation doesn't come with a map, it comes with a choice, over and over again, to act from your future, not your past. Noah knew this now, and the more he lived this way, the more magical his life became. Not because it was perfect, but because it was his, authentically, fully, unapologetically. He was no longer surviving, he was choosing, and that, more than any external shift, is the real jump. When you wake up one day, look around at your life, and realize, I built this, not by accident, but with intention, with energy, with devotion. And you remember the old days, the nights you sat alone wondering if anything would ever change. You remember how it felt to live in the in-between, the ache, the doubt, and you smile, because now you know. It was never about finding a new life. It was always about finding your way back to the one that had been calling you all along. That version of you, the bold one, the radiant one, the one who finally believed in themselves. They were never far away. They were just waiting for you to remember who you are. There's something sacred about remembering. It's not about learning something new. It's about uncovering what was always true. You are not here by accident. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are a multidimensional being woven into a field of infinite possibility. Every heartbeat, every thought, every breath is a vote for the reality you are aligning with. And the moment you begin to live as if your dreams are already unfolding, the universe begins to conspire in your favor. Not because you earned it, because you matched it. That's the silent wisdom of the quantum field. It's always listening, not to your words, but to your energy. So ask yourself, what are you vibrating right now? What reality are you rehearsing each time you think about your limitations, your past, your not enoughs? Because whether you're aware of it or not, you are always shifting, always choosing. The only question is, are you choosing with intention or out of habit? Noah's journey was never about arriving at a destination. It was about becoming someone who chooses, again and again, to live from truth instead of fear. And as he did, something extraordinary happened. He started meeting others, quiet souls just like him, who were waking up to the same truth. That their lives weren't fixed scripts, but canvases. That they weren't stuck in a story, but could write a new one. Together they formed a quiet community, not a club, not a cult, just people who chose presence, who chose to believe in their own becoming. They meditated, they shared stories, they supported each other when the old patterns came back for one more dance. And little by little, those tiny daily choices, the deep breaths, the aligned actions, the soft moments of courage, began to create something profound. A new reality, one rooted in trust, one fueled by vision, one shaped not by fear of what might go wrong, but by love for what could finally go right. This is what quantum jumping really is. Not a trick, not a hack, but a devotion. To live as if your soul had already seen the outcome and whispered to you, keep going. And now maybe it's whispering to you. Maybe something in this story stirred a memory, a feeling, a knowing. If it did, don't rush past it. Sit with it. That feeling, that's the thread. Follow it. Start small. 5 minutes a day. Close your eyes. Breathe. Feel into the version of yourself that already made it through. The one who is no longer chasing, but receiving. No longer doubting, but creating. No longer waiting, but being. Let that version of you guide your next step. Let them speak through your choices. Let them paint your words, your posture, your presence. And you'll see the world will adjust, because it always does. When you change your frequency, you change your future. So choose right now, not with fear, but with fire. Because your dream life isn't on the other side of effort, it's on the other side of identity. And the moment you remember who you are, everything changes, forever. If this story awakened something inside you, if you felt even a flicker of recognition or truth, take a moment to honor it. And if you're willing, share your story in the comments. What version of yourself are you ready to become? What dream have you buried that's ready to rise? We read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, if it gave you clarity, hope, or even a spark, consider subscribing for more stories like this. Ones that don't just entertain, but awaken. You are already shifting. Now choose to shift with purpose. We'll see you in the next reality.